Okay, Chair, we are now streaming live on YouTube. I'll hand the meeting over to yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual Cabinet meeting, the 3rd of February 2021. I am your Chair, Councillor Paul Arnott, and welcome to anybody watching via the live streaming. Everybody here today is taking part remotely, as well as being live streamed. The meeting's recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout. Be mindful of your language and that we are under the Code of Conduct. We reserve the right to remove or disconnect any participant disrupting by whatever means. Please remember, if you can, to turn telephone devices off or to silent. The meeting is dependent upon an internet connection, which is dependent upon power. If we lose that and we can't re-establish it after 15 minutes, we will have to postpone the meeting and reconvene, and details will be on the website. Please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, members, and keep your points short if possible, and if you will, don't repeat. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. Everybody's had the agenda for today, all members, but members of the public, it's available on eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your names, please confirm by saying present when you have.
Councillor Arnott.
Present, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Young.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ledger.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Present, Amanda, thank you.
Councillor Rickson.
Present, thank you.
And Councillor Rowland.
Present, thanks, Amanda.
I've just let Councillor Armstrong into the meeting, Chair, so I'll just give her a second to...
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Armstrong, if you can hear me, can you confirm your presence?
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. Yes, I'm present, thank you.
I can confirm your quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Amanda. Before we begin with the formal agenda, may I just thank all members for bearing with us on quite a late decision to defer the meeting until 6:15 start this evening. This was so that at the Prime Minister's suggestion we could go out on the street and bang saucepans and so forth for the late Captain Tom and all others who've been affected by COVID. So thank you very much for bearing with that. Thank you for Democratic Services for suggesting that. That was very good of you. Thank you. Agenda item 1 is public speaking. Debbie, do we have any public speakers that have come forth?
No, we don't tonight, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 20th of January 2021. If anybody has a comment to make on those, could you please do so by raising your electronic blue hand? And I can't see any blue hands there. So in which case, with no hands raised, I'll take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you, then the minutes of the previous meetings are agreed. Agenda item 3, do we have any apologies, please?
I have one apology, Chair, from outside the Cabinet, and that's Councillor Mike Howell.
Thank you very much indeed. I've received an apology actually from Councillor Mike Allen as well by email yesterday, so if that could be included as well, and thank you to both for offering their apologies. Right, moving on to agenda item 4, we will do a roll call now to establish whether any members of Cabinet have any declarations of interest. Amanda, please.
Councillor Arnott,
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward,
None, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong,
None, thanks.
Councillor Hookway,
None, thank you.
Councillor Jackson,
Not to my knowledge, no, thank you.
Councillor Young,
None, thank you.
Councillor Ledger,
None, thank you.
Councillor Loudon,
None, Amanda. Thank you.
Councillor Rixon,
None, thank you.
and Councillor Rowland.
None, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda, very much for that. Now agenda item 5, which is late items or matters of urgency, and there are no matters that are to be dealt with in this manner this evening. Moving on to agenda item 6, confidential or exempt items. There are no confidential or exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt in this way, although, having said that, do we not, are we or are we not going into part 2 for agenda item 23, the COVID-19?
You're quite right, Chair. That's my
Yeah.
mistake, getting carried away with your script. We do have one item that is a Part B item.
Okay, it's always such an incredibly rollicking script. I can see the drama builds and you got carried away. Thank you very much. So we will have one confidential item, which will be agenda item 23, and that will be the COVID-19 Suez claim. Suez are our waste and recycling contractors. Now moving on to agenda item 7, the forward plan. Can I invite any comments on that from outside Cabinet or within? Or if not, we can note that item. Cabinet, are we happy to note that? If you're not, please raise a hand, otherwise we'll just note them. Okay, those are duly noted. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 8, please. The minutes of the Strata Joint Scrutiny Committee held on the 11th of January 2021. I'm not really sure if I have to declare an interest. I did chair that, just for the record. Members, I'm sure, will have studied those. Are there any comments at all from outside of Cabinet or inside of Cabinet? Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of veracity. If you chaired that meeting, you're not shown as present at that meeting, which I guess you would have been were you chairing it.
In which case, because that isn't the Strata Joint Executive Committee, I wasn't present. Thank you, Councillor Hayward, for pointing that out. Correct. Okay, in which case, members, are we happy to agree these minutes? Can I ask Mr. Gordon, just for clarification, we don't need to take a vote on that, do we, Henry? We can just note
yes,
them.
there's no recommendation, so I think you just do it by negative.
Thank you very much. Okay, lovely. So there seem to be no negatives, in which case those minutes are now agreed. We go on to agenda item 9 now, which are the minutes of the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the 13th and 14th of January 2021. We have 2 recommendations for Cabinet that will resolve in an action being taken. Between minutes 114A to D and 120A to F under Key Service Plan Objectives, that the Service Plan 2021-22 be adopted as presented for Countryside and Leisure Service, the Environmental Health and Car Park Service, the Housing Service, Street Scene Service, Finance Service, Governance and Licensing Service, Place Assets and Commercialisation Service, Organisational Development Service, Growth, Development and Prosperity Service, and that the Service Plan 2021-22 for the Planning Service be adopted, subject to A, reference to both social and affordable housing, and B, inclusion of the recommendations from the audit on community infrastructure levy and section 106. And then under minute 121, the draft revenue and capital budget 2021 to 22, that the draft revenue budget 2021 to 22 be adopted. So, members, are we happy to note those minutes, please? Given that
Yeah, can I also point out that probably they're appropriately dealt with under item 14, which is the onward recommendation of the draft budget. You might as well take it into
all
account.
Of those, Henry,
14.
the whole lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it helps, it's also the same for the next one.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So that includes the service plan objectives come under that as well. Okay, thank you very much for that. So that also applies to the draft revenue and capital budget, is what you're saying there, isn't it? Yeah, that comes later. Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that at agenda item 14. I won't, forgive me, read that again there. You should be relieved to know. So under agenda item 10, the minutes of the Poverty Working Panel 18th of January 2021, there is a recommendation for Cabinet that will resolve in an action being taken under minute 28, an update on support measures, that a contingency of £100,000 be allocated to the Council's hardship fund after April 2021 to be reduced by any additional funding coming forward from Devon County Council in the same time frame. Would anybody like to speak on that from outside Cabinet?
Can I also say that's probably for item 14 because Simon's factored it into the budget. So you might want to wrap up item 14 as well.
Okay. What about the next one, Henry?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
That's fine. Are we sure now? Okay.
Yes.
I'll have a go at this one then. Agenda item 11, minutes of the Recycling and Waste Partnership Board, 20th of January 2021. There is one recommendation for Cabinet that will resolve in an action being taken under minute 56, developer charges. For the reasons set out in the report, Cabinet approve the developer container charging scheme is no longer pursued, with no further budget projections being made. Are members happy to note these minutes under agenda item 11? I see no negatives, in which case those minutes are noted. Thank you very much. We then move on to the minutes of the... Yes, Henry?
I was going to say, should I start now rather than letting you read it all? So
yes.
minute 91 and minute 92 would also be for item 14, but the remainder of the minutes on item 12 are for you to take a decision on now.
Okay. Part of me is wondering whether I should be reading all of these minutes out at this length. I'm slightly mindful that we might have people watching who haven't got the agenda.
They are in the agenda papers.
Yeah, no, they are. But okay, I think let's just do it like that, because otherwise this will be quite tedious for people who have to listen to me going on. So under Henry's advice, you can see that minutes 91 and minutes 92 we need to come back to under item 14, but minute 96, the social housing white paper, actually this does need reading out, sorry, that the Housing Service start to make preparations for the forthcoming legislation and ensure that its policies and procedures were up to date in respect of tenant safety and tenant involvement. 2, that the Housing Service improve its complaints handling processes to improve tenant satisfaction. 3, that the Housing Service revisit its systems thinking purposes to ensure it focuses on what matters to tenants and reduce failure demand. And 4, the Housing Service work with tenant representatives to embrace the sentiments and contents of the white paper. Do we need to do that one on its own, Henry? Minute 96, it might be worth.
If you want to take them separately, Chair, that's
well,
fine.
let's just do that. So anybody in the negative who doesn't agree with that, that we approve that. Okay, let's take that as approved. Minute 97, your home, your wellbeing research report, that Cabinet approve. 1, where appropriate evidence is used from the research to support housing's decision-making and service planning. 2, all teams within housing have access to the advice and expertise of the mental health specialist for supporting East Devon tenants. 3, there is a better understanding of the housing needs of those on the Devon Home Choice Register and they are supported on their housing journey. 4, the council continues to invest in our homes and neighbourhoods and ensures repairs and the programme works done to our properties are of a high standard. 5, the housing service supports universal credit claimants by helping them to maintain their tenancies and offer budgetary and financial advice where necessary. 6, the council continues to work with others to provide more housing opportunities and choices for people living in East Devon. Finally, 7, the study be used on a wider scale to promote the research with council partners nationally to promote the value of housing. Members, are we happy to agree those? If there's a negative, please indicate. If not, I should just say for all of this work, thank you so much to relevant committees for bringing this forward. Minute 101, the purchase of 51 St Andrews Road, Exmouth. Now this isn't financial, Henry, is it?
No, I think it's just to note this one.
Okay, so we're noting that the Cabinet, pursuant to the delegated authority approved by the Board, Cabinet and Council in January, February 2020, as set out in the body of that report, to purchase properties from right to buy receipts. The strategic lead has approved the purchase of the freehold interest of 51 St Andrews Road, Exmouth, subject to certificate of lawfulness, with the portfolio holder and the HRB chair. Anybody like to comment on that? Are members of Cabinet happy to note those minutes? With no negative indicated, those minutes are so noted. Thank you very much. Right, thank you. I'm so sorry I've read that all out. I'm just going to explain why I read that out, because I do know that there are people watching this on YouTube tonight who haven't got the agenda, and otherwise they wouldn't really know what we were agreeing effectively. I've got a blue hand from Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Sorry, Chair, just unmuted. I just a very pedantic point. I think on the minutes it says housing. It's headed as Housing Revenue Board, and it should be Housing Review Board. Have I read that correctly?
Yes. Where is that?
It's on the heading of the. Hang on a minute. I've got to
yes,
go for the screen.
Yes,
Can
thank you. Got it, Megan. Thank you. So those should be the minutes of the Housing Revenue Board.
No, Housing Review Board. Housing Review Board.
It should be Housing Review Board.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. On my script it does say that, but on the agenda it doesn't. Okay, thank you very much, Megan.
It's the agenda. Sorry.
Okay, no, that which is the main published document. So thank you. Excellent. Okay, thank you, officers. If we can make sure that's amended retrospectively, that would be very good. Thank you. Right, now we go on to agenda item 13, supporting the economic recovery. And we have a report from Andrew Wood, East Devon District Council Service Lead for Growth, Development and Prosperity. Andy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet has received a series of papers around business grants, which have principally been intended to compensate for drops in trade caused by both local and national restrictions. This report in front of you tonight marks a bit of a transition towards how we might best support economic recovery. It's a tentative step in that direction in terms of thinking more strategically rather than perhaps a more tactical response to those restrictions we've encountered so far. The principal proposal is to bring forward a adaptation, innovation and resilience fund and to launch that in the district. That you'll see there's a draft, a rough draft of a prospectus that mimics the key themes within the Team Devon economic recovery prospectus around people, place and business. Important to emphasise from my perspective that by no means am I pretending that we have all the answers here, and the proposal is to undertake some targeted consultation to help refine and inform that document prior to finalising the kind of priorities and intent of how that fund might work. but it is there to support businesses to adapt to a post-COVID landscape and how they might best thrive in that environment, both in terms of places, sectors, and people as well. Important to say around the funding that we have, as a result of the decision taken by Cabinet in November last year, held back £1 million from the additional restrictions grant to help support recovery. Those funds need to be deployed by March 2022, and the recommendation in the paper is to top that up with £1 million from the business rate pilot reserve to help sustain this fund beyond March of next year, on the basis that recovery is going to be quite slow and painful, and there's going to be sustained support. Finally, the other key transition that's happened, and there'll be further clarity coming in the budget at the beginning of next month, is around changes in national funding, structural funding, post-European funds. May have seen references to levelling up and also the Shared Prosperity Fund that are coming forward, and having a clear pipeline of potential investment projects is a key means of being able to access those future funding streams. There's a blank template appended to the report. Clearly, that is in the process of being populated, and we'll come back to Cabinet, and that's being coordinated through Devon County Council prior to being reported to the Local Enterprise Partnership Board in April. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Andy, very much for that. Members, would anybody like to ask any questions or make any comments of that from outside of Cabinet, please? Yeah, Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, really, I'm bringing this up very much on behalf of Councillor Mike Allen, who unfortunately can't be here this evening because his daughter is very unfortunately been taken to hospital at short notice. And he's pointed out to me, and as you know, Mike Allen is extremely keen on the recovery for business and for support for business. And so therefore he welcomes the Adaptation, Innovation and Resilience Fund, and points out that these grants can be funded from the Business Rates Retention Reserve as one source, and that it appears to Mike, and I've looked through the report, and I also cannot see where scientific, technological, IT and creative media, all those very modern business developments are not really shown as being able to be supported. And of course, it's those sort of businesses that are going to help to lead us forward out of the restrictions and out of the pandemic. And therefore, I think it's some clarity that Mike Allen is asking for, to ensure that it's just not the small businesses, the retail businesses and so on. It's often the high level innovation businesses that are still actually very much in need of grant support to enable them to actually thrive and to push forward as a means of recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moulding. And I'll just, Councillor Allen very kindly, despite his very difficult family circumstances, took the time to write offering his apologies. And just to restate what you said in a way, to ask Andy perhaps to comment on this. He says the proposals are good ones, but he'd like to clarify criteria. And his comment is, it may be accidental, but the criteria stated exclude scientific, technological, IT, creative media and software, or green technology organisations, which I believe we want to support. That may be because it only relates to ARG funds, but it's not clear and businesses will not necessarily understand the finesses. So, yeah, Andy, I hope that's, are you happy to comment on this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the pre-pandemic challenge for the economy of the district was to shift towards a higher value, higher wage economy, undoubtedly, and we can't afford to lose sight of that. I've had an exchange separately with Councillor Allen on these points. There are other forms of support, for example, through the enterprise zone and the science park that are targeting those types of businesses going forward. I do fundamentally accept the point. I think there would be, if Cabinet considers, an opportunity to include additional criteria around the business section of the prospectus and to specifically list those sectors. The risk, obviously, is that we would end up potentially naming every single type of sector in the district, and there's a question about prioritisation going forward. So there's a line to tread there.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Andy. I hope that, and thank you, Councillor Moulding, for bringing that to Cabinet's attention as well, and to Councillor Allen. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Andy and his team for putting this together. Yeah, to respond to Councillor Allen's points that Councillor Moulding has so kindly raised, I was aware of these earlier. So on page 67, you'll see the objective of this fund is to support economic recovery across all sectors in the district, with particular emphasis on specific priorities. In my discussions with Exeter Science Park, I'm delighted to say that a lot of the industries that Councillor Allen sort of honed in on actually haven't suffered too badly during COVID. They've generally just got on. Science Park spent a lot of money making itself COVID secure, and the business, the entrepreneurs, the industries in that area just generally cracked on. But of course, what we have here is adaptation, resilience. The sectors that are named here: retail, hospitality, tourism. I mean, for East Devon, that's a huge one. They are the ones that have been absolutely pummeled by what's happened in the last year. Aviation, aerospace, another key victim of what's happened, but one that has the potential to flourish with innovation and electric power, etc. So I think, as Andy says, this is a reasonable list. If you keep adding to it, effectively, I think rather than making it more clear, you'll actually reduce the clarity and confuse the issue. So, but we have a period of consultation proposed. I'd be delighted if Councillor Allen would join the panel as per the recommendation on here as one of the Conservative members. I'm sure he's got a lot to add, and I'll take on board everything he says, as will, I'm sure, every other member of the panel when we meet. So I don't think you can take this as gospel. It's not gospel. It is a draft, and it's a work in progress. But I'm delighted that we've got to this stage that we can put a great deal of money towards it and help as many businesses as we can get through this. I'm delighted, of course, that there is specific reference to two age groups that have suffered disproportionately, 16 to 24s and the over 50s. And I know Councillor Allen has a particular penchant for those two groups. So I'm sure he'll be able to assist on that if he so wishes. He may not wish to, we don't know, he's not here. So yes, Chair, I'm going forward. I mean, I personally, obviously other members may wish to speak, but I'd be delighted to propose the recommendation set out in this report and get us moving forwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Cabinet, Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second the recommendations, the proposal that's just been put forward. I think everything that I probably would want to say has already been said, so I'm certainly not going to repeat things and waste people's time in that respect, because I think it's all been said. I think it's a well worth start that's being made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Okay, so Cabinet, we have a proposer and a seconder for that. We do need to take a vote with Debbie helping us through that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposals that are set out on page 61, please. Okay, I have 9 votes for. 9. So if I just lower the hands, if there's any member of the Cabinet who is voting against those proposals, please raise your electronic hand now. And anyone who's abstaining from the vote, please raise your electronic hand now. So, Chair, that is carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Debbie. And seconding Councillor Hayward's comments, thank you very much to Andy Wood for his report. It is, we're lucky in Cabinet to have a look behind closed doors at how much work goes into this and research and strategic thinking. So thank you very much. So now to cover an absolute multiplicity of agenda items, which I'm sure Henry will remind Simon and I all as we go through, we have agenda item 14, the revenue and capital budgets for 2021 to 2022. And we have a report from Mr. Simon Davey, the strategic lead for finance at East Devon. Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully straightforward report. This follows on from your last Cabinet meeting where the revenue and capital budgets came to you for 21-22. Since you adopted them, they've been out to overview, scrutiny, Housing Review Board to consider the service plans and the implications of those service plans on the budget, and also considered the budget in detail. In terms of recommendations coming back to Cabinet from those various committees, I'm pleased to say there are no amendments being considered or being asked for you to consider in terms of that draft agenda. So the budget is as was set out. Just to highlight to you in 2.2 of the report, if you remember in the draft report that I took forward on the 6th, I did highlight that additional items might come forward in terms of reports from the poverty panel and also the Queen's Drive recommendations, which are still to come forward. But we've also had a recommendation through regarding mental health officer from your last Cabinet report. So if you remember, we had one-off government funding that we set aside for these items that we knew were likely to come forward. So the report is picking up those two items in terms of the poverty panel, setting aside 100,000 in terms of the recommendation, and also in terms of a mental health officer, £50,000. So that's coming out of one-off government funding that you've set aside in your budget of £616,000 that we got funding for COVID, and also 700,000 as a one-off specific grant for district councils. So that gave you 1.3 as a budget sum to be held for council to allocate these additional items. So far you have the poverty panel request and the health officer. So those have gone against that sum. The balance, council will get requests, I'm sure, during the year in order of using that balance, in particularly, as the leader will know from the LED, in terms of the implications of conversations with them. So that's the main element on the budget. The one area that's new to you in terms of the report is in section 3. So that's the council tax collection fund. So new regulations have come in. I'll bore you with a little bit of detail there. So in terms of the government have brought in some regulations to deal with losses that authorities have seen in the current year in terms of council tax collection. So what those regulations allow you to do is the in-year deficit that we're seeing in the current year on the collection fund, the ability to spread that deficit over 3 years. So rather than having to make it good next year, local authorities can spread that over 3 years. What that does for us, though, is you have to apply that. The regulations make you apply that deficit spread over 3 years. East Devon, as billing authority, has been holding a surplus in its collection fund in order to take care of such instances. So East Devon has held a healthy balance in the collection fund. So if deficits came along, you could use that fund and not have to worry in future years about that deficit. But the regulations basically make you spread pay back that any surpluses you've got and spread the deficit. So the consequence for us is, ironically, we've got now a council tax surplus next year being declared, East Devon's element, if you look at 3.3 of the report, of 367,000. So that's a collection fund surplus that we bring into the budget now. The spreading, though, of a deficit, of this year's deficit, is 190,000. So what the report, I'm suggesting in the report for you to consider, is although we've got the 366 surplus in next year, is we set aside 189,000 of that to deal with the deficit spread that we know we're going to get. So the advantage for council is you don't have to budget for that deficit in future years. You can use that sum next year to offset that. It does then give you 177,000 left remaining, and the recommendation is you pay that into your general fund balance. If members remember the position on the general fund balance in terms of the current year, we're using our general fund balance to deal with the additional costs for COVID, bringing our balance down to the minimum level, bringing it down to a predicted 3 million, whereas our balance level is between 3 million and 3.8. So what I'm suggesting for members in terms of a recommendation is that additional 177 left from the council tax surplus to pay that into your general fund balance to hold for next year. The remaining report deals with prudential indicators, treasury management strategy, which are next items covered off on your agenda. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that, indeed, as ever. So from outside of Cabinet, would anybody like to ask any questions or make any comments on that? Yeah, Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
It's an overall comment I would like to make, and I hope the council will bear this in mind, because it is mentioned in the report that the core principles of the preparation of the budget are based on the council plan. Now, as I see it, the council plan was last updated on the 11th of December 2019. So I'm rather concerned that we have a budget based on a council plan that either we don't have, or if we do, it's very much out of date.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moulding. I think you're aware that the statement of intent was published in the last couple of months, and that firmly indicated that we would be doing the council plan, and that would be in the lead up to May. So I hope we're covered there. I don't know if anybody wants to. Simon, are you happy to come back on that one?
Yes, I can do, Chair. So exactly as you said there, Leader, in terms of if you refer to the original report that came to Cabinet, it did highlight key objectives from the statement of intent that the current Cabinet have put forward, and particular areas of spend that have been included in the budget and within service plans. So although we're reflecting the current council plan, we're definitely picking up all the new themes and key objectives that were in that statement of intent within the budget.
Thank you for that, Simon. I think our feeling was, as a Cabinet, Councillor Moulding, was that in the absolute crisis we are in, but were particularly in a few months ago as well, that wasn't the time to load on to the officers the full council plan process. But I think we now can. But it's a point well made. Thank you, Councillor Eileen Wragg, please.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, that we've had COVID. It's been an extraordinary time. We've had to do meetings. We've had to learn how to meet virtually. We're in a quite different place to where we were in 2019, at the end of the year 2019. So things are vastly different. And we do have to be mindful of the pressures that the officers would be under, because they're having to homeschool as well. as do their work. And it's not easy when you've got children and you're working from home, and I mean, we all know the problems. So I think, although I've great respect for Councillor Moulding, as he knows, but an awful lot has happened, and I think you have to give some sort of leeway for what's happened. And just a reminder that it was less than a year ago, and the Conservative Party were advocating no meetings at all, not until I think this May. So a little bit of reflection maybe might be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wragg. So coming back into Cabinet now, please, Councillor Jack Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. As a starting point, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Simon and his team. This demonstrates again about the ability of him and his team to produce a balanced budget, which has been especially trying over this past year. So this budget has already been through Cabinet earlier in January, and through the scrutiny and overview meetings as well. So I don't think there's too much for me to add, apart from saying that I'd like to actually propose acceptance of the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Rowland. Councillor John Loudon, please.
I second Councillor Rowland's proposal, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon.
Chair, can I just check that effectively also endorses agreeing the minutes from the previous 3 sets that we talked about earlier? So the 3 minutes from joint overview and scrutiny, the poverty working panel, and the HRB that were deferred to item 14.
I, as they say, on your own head be it. I'm happy to take your advice on that, yeah. Henry.
There's no change. They just need to.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowland and Councillor Loudon. Are you both happy with that as proposed?
Yes. Thank you for Henry for pointing that out. I should have added that when I mentioned about the recommendations in the report as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, right. I concur, and I hope Councillor Rowland reflects upon this.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, Debbie, could you take us through a vote on this, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposals, please. And Chair, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. This gives me an opportunity, which I couldn't do earlier, to, first of all, I think the thanks to Simon and his team for a stunning display of sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul over the last year. This has been really challenging, and what not all members will, it's not only it's been skillful reallocation of money, it's just that the circumstances have changed by the month as well. The government changes policy, we get bits of money that come from county. We've asked for some today actually to cover one part of this. It's constantly changing, and I'm really lost in admiration for the skill. So thank you, Simon, and your team very much. I'd also like to thank the chairs of Overview and Scrutiny and all the members who took part in those 2 fantastic meetings a couple of weeks ago. Really, it was a pleasure to watch both. Thank you very much. And Cabinet is very grateful for your consideration of all of this, and it makes us feel much safer that we're doing the right thing. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to agenda item 15, capital strategy for 2021-22 until 2024-25. And we have a report, I believe, from John Symes, the Finance Manager. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the capital strategy is presented annually as part of the budget process, and it provides a high-level summary detailing the various strategies and processes in place to manage the Council's capital expenditure plans. It also covers the sort of the appropriate funding for that capital expenditure. So it covers areas such as the use of capital receipts, borrowing, whether that's internally borrowed, externally borrowed, and the timing of this borrowing. The strategy also covers treasury management activity and investment decisions, but the next item on the agenda covers this in more detail. The capital strategy also aims to bring together, it's all the way through the strategy, in fact, the governance arrangements and financial controls in place for the production of the capital programme, the monitoring of that capital programme, and also project management around those items. And it also takes into account the strategic considerations needed, for example, the assessment of the overall prudence, affordability and sustainability of the capital plans. One further aim of the strategy is to highlight the importance of risk management and the approach taken by the council to identify, mitigate and report against these risks. So I hope that covers the main areas of this overarching strategy. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, John, for that report. Non-members of Cabinet, would anybody like to speak or ask a question? That's nobody at the moment. Coming back within Cabinet, please. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for all the work that you've done on this particular subject, John. And having sat down with you and gone through this in detail last week, I'm full of admiration of your ability to explain this to somebody like me. So thank you. I would like to point out a couple of things. People might note that there's no borrowing for financial commercial investment now. And I think as an authority, we're pleased to see that, especially when you read in other areas of the country about how some authorities are actually paying the price for their previous investment decisions on commercial property. And the interesting point as well about the public works loan, the rates did reduce again towards the end of last year, but they did tweak that so that no longer can that borrowing be used for commercial investments and is purely for infrastructure, which again, I think is something that we welcome within our district. And because we haven't had that exposure to commercial investment as well, especially with the way that interest rates are, because we can see as well that in some areas we are talking about negative interest rates now, which for anybody from a personal point of view would be horrified to see that, to think that you'd actually end up having to pay money to somebody for holding your money instead of gaining any interest is quite a new phenomenon that is facing us. So for the returns that are being seen through this at the moment that are being achieved, I do applaud John and his team for what they're managing to achieve at the moment. So I'd also like to propose acceptance of the recommendations that are in the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Cabinet, Councillor Jeff Young, please. Jeff.
Sorry, I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We've got Councillor Paul Hayward as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question from a smaller authority perspective as to the feasibility, legality, propriety of the district council acting as a lender to those smaller authorities. At the moment, a small authority would have to usually approach the Public Works Loan Board. There's a very comprehensive review process and a justification process, have to prove all sorts of things. But of course, the district council is like the parent, it's the umbrella over all the smaller authorities in East Devon. And I'm just wondering whether there's potential, given that effectively we are the precepting authority and the Public Works Loan Board gets its security from the precept. That's how smaller authorities, acquire the finance, and there's always an element of security, albeit intangible. Whether the district council, as part of its investment consideration, could act as a lender on similar terms to those smaller authorities, you know, because a lot of them have aspirations, they have projects they'd like to get off the ground, and often they are stymied by lending constraints. And it's just a thought. Perhaps it's something that I can take up with Councillor Rowland and Simon and John as to whether it is feasible. It might not be. It might just be a complete dead duck. But I think in the environment we find ourselves in, where, you know, we're even considering the concept of negative interest rates and the impact on our financial modelling, you know, we know the central government funding is gone. You know, we have to manage this ship on our own. So I think every possibility must be considered until it becomes an impossibility. Then we take it off the table. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayward. I won't invite any further comments on that. I think we better not invent a bank on the spot. But I think it's a really interesting idea, isn't it? And thank you for that. I'm sure there'll be discussions that will flow from that. So we have a proposer and a recommender. Debbie, can we go to the vote, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposal. And Chair, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Right, we're now moving on to agenda item 16, the Treasury Management, including Strategy 21 to 22, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy. I'm going to be surprised here. It's Simon or John. So whichever one of you wants to go.
Thank you, Chair.
It is John. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So from the capital strategy, the Treasury Management Strategy provides a little more detail concerning the investment and borrowing activities of the Council. The strategy itself is very prescribed. It can be very technical in areas, and we're supported by our Treasury advisors on this strategy. The strategy is available as a link to the main report, and I don't plan on running through all 46 pages, but I do wish to just pull out the main points from each section, if I may, starting at section 2. This section just covers the Council's borrowing need or capital financing requirement. So this just reflects the historic capital expenditure of the Council. This underlying borrowing need actually reduces by an annual charge to the budget, and this is called the minimum revenue provision. In the policy setting this charge is actually detailed at 2.3 in the strategy. This charge is based on the asset life method. Moving on to section 3, this covers borrowing. So at 3.22 of the strategy, the Council's authorised limit for external debt is set. This is a legal limit on regarding the maximum level of external debt that we can have, and this cannot be exceeded. The main point I'd like to draw in from section 4 that covers investments is the fact that it still highlights the continued investment priority that we have regarding, firstly, the security of our investments, then the liquidity, and finally, the consideration of yield. The section also contains the parameters in which we can invest our balances. The final section, which is section 5, contains all the appendices to the strategy. So this covers further prudential indicators. There's economic and interest rate forecasts in there, and there's also detail of the current portfolio held. So that's the strategy. I'm happy to take any questions on that, or I can go into the mid-year review section of the report.
Okay, thanks, John, very much. I was just looking at page 61 of the report, and as ever, please treat me like an idiot. Am I right in thinking that our investments as held on the 30th of September last effectively add up to about getting on for 62 million. Is that correct?
Let me, is that within the mid-year review section, Chair?
Yes. That's right. In the mid-year Treasury Management Review, yeah. Sorry, just looking at that. I'm backtracking slightly. I suppose the question is genuinely out of interest. It's kind of that man in the street thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
What have we got, out there, and then set against that sort of what do we owe out there? Just that broad question. Simon looks like he can pick that one up.
Yeah, I think it's page 87 you're looking at, Chair, of the actual list of investments held at the 30th September. So
yes.
That's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
At that point, that highlights where we have all our cash invested on that particular date. So the reason it's particularly high at that point, our main investments, if you look at that statement on page 87, is we've got roughly about 30 million out with external investments. That's our core money that sits out. So if you look at our balance sheet and add up our general fund, our housing revenue account, our various reserves, in essence, they come to about 30 million. That is a constant sum almost. That's held in external investments. The rest of the money there in internal investments is mainly cash flow, and that can vary on a daily basis. When this was taken on the 30th of September, we would have had significant monies in from government in terms of government grants that were due to be paid out. So we had quite a bit of cash, which we then invested temporarily in those various funds that you can see there listed. So the main one to focus on that normally comes back to our balance sheet is the first two that come to about 30 million. The rest is more temporary.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for answering Simple Man's question. Right, any members from outside Cabinet like to ask any questions on that or make any comments? Or if not, to come back inside Cabinet, please. Would anybody like to pick this up? Councillor Marianne Rickson, please.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm just curious to know what we have on deposit and why with Thurrock Borough Council.
John could take it better than me probably, but we often, in terms of temporary investments, so this is daily in terms of we have surplus money, where's best to hold it until we need to use it. Local authorities do invest and borrow from each other. They're quite a sound in terms of risk. Not any local authorities have gone bankrupt in recent years. It's come close, but in terms of they are backed by central government, so they are a good risk in terms of placing temporary money.
Fantastic. This world of financial wizardry, so it's fascinating, isn't it, when you get into it? Cabinet, please, what would we like to do with this? It would be useful to have a proposer and a seconder, if possible. Councillor Dan Ledger, please.
Could you propose it, Chair? The recommendations as stated in the report.
Thank you, Councillor John Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Ledger's proposition. Sorry, Jack.
Okay, thank you. And in which case then, let's go to the vote on that one, please, as well, Debbie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposal. Thank you. So I have 9 votes for, 10. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie, very much for that. So we now move on to agenda item 17, which is the programme of meetings. And those are really there for noting. It's a list of all of our meetings for 2021 going into May 2022. So I take it that we're happy to note those unless somebody wishes to put a hand up in the negative. And it looks as if nobody is, in which case those are duly noted with our thanks to Democratic Services for putting that schedule together. Again, not easy. And who knows, hopefully by May 2022, we might even be in a room with each other. Agenda item 18, interim Devon carbon plan. And we have a report here, I'm very pleased to say, from our strategic lead for housing, health and environment, John Golding. Over to you, please, John.
Thank you, Chair. If I may briefly introduce the report. This piece of work has been led by Devon County Council, and as you can see, it's a carbon reduction plan, an ambitious carbon reduction plan for the whole of the county. The interim plan has been produced by the Net Zero Carbon Task Force and has been using a strong evidence-based approach across the county. The plan goes way beyond an organisational plan for the county council and is looking, as I say, to decarbonise the entire county over a period of time. We committed to supporting this work as part of our sign up to the Devon Climate Emergency Declaration, and we've been contributing to the development of the plan through a variety of groups that we've been working with. You can see the deadline for consultation responses for this stage of the process is the 15th of January. And the interim nature of the plan reflects that this is work in progress, and a further piece of work that needs to be undertaken fairly shortly is the Citizens' Assembly process. And one of the reasons why this has been delayed is because it was anticipated that this would be a face-to-face process, where clearly that's not appropriate in the current circumstances, so it has been deferred slightly. The county have been supported by Exeter University, who have quite considerable expertise in climate change, and there's been a whole series of themed evidence hearings that have been undertaken by the Net Zero Task Force, and that task force has been chaired by Professor Patrick Devine-Wright, again an expert in this field, which has helped produce the document. The document recognises that there's a lot of cross-cutting themes affecting tourism, business, travel, our consumption, diet, our own diets, recycling and reduction proposals. It's quite a wide-ranging plan. Helpfully, it also does recognise that there's associated with climate change ecological emergency, although this is one of the areas that perhaps could be beefed up in the plan a little bit. There are some gaps in the plan. There's certainly some uncertainty around funding, how these things are going to be afforded, some reliance on technological developments that hopefully will evolve over the period of the plan. I have to say, for members that are interested, or any members of the public that are listening in, there is an excellent website on Devon Climate Emergency, has a really strong evidence base behind this plan, and you'll see the expert advice that's being used to input and shape the plan. I've captured a number of comments in section 3 of the report. I've been working with our portfolio holders, Cabinet and SMT Plus have inputted into the comments that are in section 3. If members approve the report, what I plan to do is report these comments back and any further comments that occur through debate to the group at county, and then I'll propose to come back to members with a further report on the final version of the Devon Carbon Plan. And then I will also advise members on how we might need to realign our own climate change strategy to ensure that it does align up with the Devon Carbon Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John, very much. Some people may just ask the question. I know this is an evolving situation, but in the Devon Carbon Plan, they're aiming at 2050, aren't they, at the moment? Whereas obviously various districts, including us, are looking at something a bit sooner. But you know, how does that work moving forward?
Yes, so there's two headline targets in the plan. As you rightly say, the plan looks for being carbon neutral by 2050 at the latest. And it does emphasise that at the latest, because that is something that they want to have feedback on. And as you say, a number of districts have adopted different levels. The plan also highlights that there is a target of a 50% reduction in carbon levels that were measured at 2010, and that be achieved by 2030. So quite an ambitious target to halve the amount of carbon emissions over the next 9 years now.
Thank you, John, very much. Members from outside Cabinet, would anybody like to comment or ask a question, please? If so, hands raised, if you would. If not, thank you. Let's come into Cabinet. Councillor Jeff Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased that we're doing this carbon reduction with our partners in Devon. When I first looked at the challenge 2 years ago, it was going to be a massive undertaking. We cannot change the world ourselves, but we need to work with others to achieve carbon reduction by, as you say, at least 2050, and I'd like to see it at least 2040. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to just come back out of Cabinet for a second, please. I've got some hands I hadn't seen. Can I come to Councillor Eileen Wragg, please?
Thank you. Well, some years ago, and I think he was done away with in 2009, Devon County Council had a very, very enthusiastic climate change officer. I think he was called Ian Bateman. But they didn't see a need for him after 2009. So sadly, they didn't have one. And I think now that some of the district councils, including ours, and I'm pleased to say ours is one of them, have brought their target to 2040, that Devon County Council are now listening. So I hope that that will continue. I think it probably will, because it's been brought into sharp focus. And the fact that, you know, councils are producing EV charging points actually proves that. So, you know, I think we're doing the right thing anyway in engaging or trying to engage a climate change officer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ray. Yes, that is budgeted and that matter is in hand, and we wish to see that move forward as fast as possible. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome this report, and it's really pleasing to see that East Devon 10 years are going to be 10 years ahead of Devon County, but hopefully, as Councillor Wragg has said, that they're going to take notice of East Devon District Council. I mean, it might seem a silly question, Chair, and you just said that a lot of this is going to be budgeted for. So is it all going to be paid for by whatever we want by obviously the district council, will we get further assistance from central government?
It's an excellent question, which I'm very happy to throw over to John, who's finding the money down the back of the sofa at the moment, I think, probably.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's one of the big challenges that the draft, or the interim rather, carbon plan identifies. It will need a huge amount of funding that's currently unbudgeted, and a lot of that funding will need to come from government, from business, from all sorts of sources, and we'll be hearing no doubt more about that over time. And certainly we're hosting as a country COP26 this summer, and again I think we'll hear quite a lot about how government proposed to assist local authorities, regions like us, actually deliver these plans. But that there is a weakness in the plan at the moment, and the same goes for our own adopted climate change strategy. We've got ambitions in there that we haven't fully scoped and budgeted for, but that will be something that we develop over time.
Thank you for that, John. Very good point, Councillor Gazzard. And I think the government wish to have a green-inspired and led recovery, don't they? So the details of that as we move forward will be of great interest to all of this. Thank you. Councillor Marianne Rickson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would obviously like to thank John for putting this report together, because he's done this in addition to all the other responsibilities he has, which are enormous, including COVID responsibility. I agree with Jeff that this has to be a joint effort. And of course, that means this is going to be painful choices for individuals, not just businesses and councils. It's going to have to be a joint effort with everybody, because it will require a fundamental change in behaviour on behalf of the public, because main GHG emissions come from housing, from our heating our homes, and from transport. But of course, the transport conundrum has been resolved to a small degree by using Zoom, so that we are not travelling nearly as much. So this has been a help in itself, but it's not enough. John has already referred to the interim Devon carbon plan. There is a website which is called Devon Climate Emergency. And for anyone who is interested, slides of all the webinars that they've held regarding the various important topics can be found on that website if you want to catch up with these at a later date. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson, very much for that. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Rickson for saying predominantly what I was going to say. The key themes from this are very clear. It is a huge cost. Mr. Golding touched on that. It is going to require a marked change of behaviour across the whole of the UK. But it's also going to require intervention from central government to put its money where its mouth is. So by passing legislation that forces this to happen. I am lobbied almost on a daily basis by people who say, why aren't East Devon, why isn't Devon moving quick enough towards this climate change proposals, towards reducing its carbon footprint? And it's limited to things we can do, but it's going to come from nationally. And therefore, unless the country as a whole understands that by kicking it down the road because it's too expensive, we can't afford it now, well, when you're up to your neck in water, it's too late to worry about that. So I think we as a council, with Devon, with other local authorities in the southwest, in the whole UK, need to lobby hard, all our MPs, and see some tangible changes, because when it's too late, it will be too late. You know, things that developers can do, businesses can do, local authorities can do, individual households and residents can do. Councillor Rickson summed it up. It's got to come down to behaviour, and it's not doing it with a stick, it's doing it with a carrot, an encouraging thing. Councillor Rickson has commented, there is no planet B. It's a very good point. You know, unfortunately, you can't keep kicking this can down the road. And this council is to be applauded. It has some very, very credible and well-received green aspirations and aims, you know, but we need the entire council behind us. We need the entire electorate of East Devon, of Devon behind us to push this forward, because just talking about it and going around in circles saying, well, we have no money, we can't do this, it's too difficult. Well, I'm afraid that, well, that day will come around very quickly. It depresses me deeply that the world is just chugging along thinking there will be more time for this. There won't be, and when something has to be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayward. John, I hope you don't mind, and I hope Andy doesn't mind at all. Forgive me, Andy would. As I understand it, the money for the Southwest that is likely to come down may come down principally through the local enterprise partnership, which is something that Andy may be able to just help us with, if you're happy to, Andy, a couple of sentences.
Specifically for low carbon, Chair?
Well, I suppose, yes. Well, fair enough. I suppose I meant green funding in general, but yes.
Yes, it's a good point. The local enterprise partnership are looking to position the wider area as a powerhouse for clean growth, and I think that terminology is very important. You referenced earlier a green recovery. The government has obviously, I think, phrased it as a green industrial revolution. We've just had the energy white paper as well, I think. So all of those things need to come together. I think it does link back to the previous item 13, around the pipeline of future projects as well, because the more we can help to bring forward projects that deliver certifiable carbon savings, the more we can seek to access those types of funding streams, regardless of whether they come through the local enterprise partnership or not, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Andy, very much for that. John, do you want to add anything to that, or probably that's about sums it up, does it?
Yeah, I think and Andy's bidding for a good amount of funding wherever the opportunity arises. He's very quick to get a bid in.
Yes. No, I thought it was worth reminding Cabinet and Council of that. And good luck with that. And you do a fantastic job already. It's coming through. Very exciting. Okay, so thank you very much. So there are no other speakers on that. So we do have a simple recommendation, which is that we feed our comments on the interim Devon Carbon Plan back as part of the consultation process and invite a further report on the updated plan. So can I have a proposer for that, please, and a seconder? Councillor Marianne Rickson to propose, yes?
I propose acceptance as per the report.
Okay, and Councillor Nick Hookway?
Yes, I'd like to second that proposal, please, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Debbie, can we take a vote on that, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposal. And that is carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very quick as well. Wow. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so moving on to item 19, which is the proposed, the independent proposed review of council management structure. I'm just going to come to Councillor John Loudon on this to start with, if that's okay. John. Oh, you're muted, John.
Is that better? Sorry. Right. I'd like to just say something about this item, if I may, Chair, at this point. As the new portfolio holder, within whose area of responsibility the conduct of a management review would fall, I have this afternoon had my first opportunity to discuss with the Chief Executive some aspects of his report and recommendations. In light of this, I wish to further consider what we discussed, and to allow this to happen, I'm recommending to you, Leader, that the Chief Executive's report be withdrawn from tonight's Cabinet agenda. Now, I also want to make some important points beyond this, and they are that I genuinely recognise that this decision may prolong concerns that there may be amongst managers and staff about what any review might mean for them. I do fully appreciate that a review might make some staff feel uncomfortable and concerned, but I want to send as clear a message as possible to all managers and to all staff at every level and in every section in this council. Any review would not be driven by a need or an intention to save money. It would not be about making changes for change's sake. It would be about ensuring that the council's management structures and roles are the best ones to take this council positively forward. And it would not be about delivering any predetermined outcomes. Any review would look at what the council's future management structure ought to be as we look to leave this pandemic behind us, to allow us to build on the positives that this council has delivered for residents and businesses, and to benefit from changes in the ways of working that recent years, and particularly the past year, have brought about. So therefore, Chair, accordingly, I'm asking for this matter to be deferred from tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Loudon. I was party to the same discussions, and I think that's absolutely the appropriate thing to do for tonight. So we will defer that until another occasion. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 20, the Hayne Lane site in Honiton. And where are we? Just going back down to, forgive me. Right, thank you very much. So agenda item 20, the Hayne Lane site in Honiton. And I'm pleased that we have a report here from Alison Hayward, who is our project manager for place assets and commercialisation. Alison, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. This report on Hayne Lane relates to the Hayne Lane site to the west of Honiton. And it's a site owned in part by the council and part by Coombe Estates, as shown on the plan in the report. The site is allocated for employment use, and there's an opportunity for joint working between the council and Coombe Estates to bring this forward for delivery. The first stage of that would be to undertake a master plan exercise. And so this report therefore seeks approval for the use of the business rate pilot reserve fund as the council's contribution towards the costs of undertaking that master plan exercise, and that would be a contribution of 50% of the costs. So the recommendations in the report, the first recommendation, members might want to add to this so that it refers to the reserve fund being utilised to provide 50% of the funding for a sum of up to 20,000 for the commissioning of a master plan study, just to provide that clarification. And the second recommendation would remain as is. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Can you just, I missed the, was it 20 or 50,000 in recommendation one?
20,000 for the sum of up to 20,000 being the council's contribution.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm sure that's been captured by Democratic Services as well. Okay, thank you very much. Very pleased that we have got a member speaker already registered on this. So over to Councillor Susie Bond, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This whole site is actually in my ward, hence my my interest. But the extension of Heath Park employment site has been bubbling away for more years than I care to remember. And I welcome the production of a master plan to look into the possibilities and the viability of doing work there. It's an extremely visually sensitive site, and we must be mindful of any landscape impact. But the entire site falls within Gittisham Parish, and the parish councillors are keen to be consulted during the production of the master plan and not simply asked to comment as consultees on the final document. Looking forward, it's important, I think, that we take advantage of the considerable local knowledge available within the parish council And I'd like to suggest, if I may, that following the initial ward member briefing, that a representative from each of Gittisham Parish Council, Honiton Town Council and the Coombe Estate be welcomed to meetings where these proposals are discussed. Thank you, Chair.
So in an unorthodox first, I think, Councillor Pond, those seem like royally good ideas to me. Are you able to tap that out as a sort of, for Cabinet, suggested recommendation 3 maybe? Would you be prepared to do that, or just read it out very slowly in a few minutes' time?
Yeah, I can email it to whoever's taking notes.
Okay, thank you.
Or do you want me to do it again, read it out again?
Yes, please. Yes,
we can have it. We need it ahead of a decision. So if you can bang it through email, that would be ideal.
Okay. Thank you.
Who to, Henry?
Me, please.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you, Susie, Councillor Bond, very much. So we'll have to play for time a bit here to give Councillor Bond a few moments. Councillor, anybody outside of Cabinet other than Councillor Bond? No. Councillor Jack Rowland, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to know that I'm trying to eat up some time then, isn't it, while that process takes place. It was really a question at the moment. Looking at the plan, the area circled in green, as I understand it, that's a relatively new garden centre that opened not that long ago, if I remember rightly. And knowing that area, the access road along that to get to that garden centre is particularly narrow, if I recall correctly. I'm just wondering whether this master plan will also take into account what is outside of those ownership of the land boundaries in terms of the access road. Presumably the master plan will take that into account.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rowland. Alison, what would you say to that?
Yes, certainly the master plan will consider that, and that's one of the aspects where the access can come through Hayne Lane into the council's site, and then access through into the Coombe Estate land. So it wouldn't. The idea would be that it wouldn't access off the road adjacent to the garden centre, because that is a narrow road. Yeah.
Okay. Alison, can I just ask you from the officer perspective, the idea that Councillor Bond had a few minutes ago, which is just to make sure we have ongoing involvement from the ward members and the parish council, is that okay from an officer perspective for that to work?
Absolutely. That's something that we have done in the past with projects of this nature involving town councils and third parties as necessary. So
absolutely. Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Paul Haywood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the key part of the proposal, key wording that neatly encapsulates what Councillor Bond was alluding to, is the final paragraph before the recommendation. So a project group will be established with the portfolio holder and these members in order to share information and views on the project as it progresses, which evidently points to liaison with those parish councils. And also in the 2 paragraphs above that, which to work with the community and other stakeholders will ensure that the scheme has their support as much as possible and the site is viable and deliverable in the round. So it goes without saying that the input from the parish council, the town council, will be critical, because they are, they're the boots on the ground. I think that the point that Alison made is very, very telling. Yes, the road is very narrow. I visited Coombe Garden Centre myself. I suppose I should at this point declare an interest if we're, being proper about it. My brother-in-law, family member, works at that garden centre. I can't see how this will affect him too much, but I will make that declaration, if I may, through the DSOs. But yes, so we have the blue section right where it needs to be, and Coombe have the red. So of course, arguably, this is why it's a joint project. They need us to get access to their land in a safe and efficient way. We need them because they've got more land than us. So it's a lovely symbiotic relationship between the two of us. And as Councillor Bond says, it's been a long time coming. At the moment, it's just, sort of redundant land. It's not really doing much, very pretty to look at. But as an economic driver for Honiton, and then as an economic driver for East Devon, it has huge potential. So I'm very thankful to Alison and her team for putting this together. I've been aware of it quite a while, and and I'm sure other members in other roles have been aware of it even longer than I am. It's a given. So yeah, I'm 100% behind this. So moving forwards, once I obviously have the wording for that final recommendation, I'd like to think I can just give it my unreserved support and propose. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayward. So that would involve recommendation 1, that we identify £20,000 as, and Henry's got the wording on that. And the reason I think it's really worth going for the recommendation 3 that Councillor Bond has kindly drafted for us is that it's always to make it obvious, isn't it? It's worth telling the parish council and the ward members you're definitely involved, especially on something that's been going on such a long time. So Henry, have you got Councillor Bond's third paragraph now?
Yeah, I do. I've distilled it slightly, which I hope Councillor Bond won't mind, which is simply that it says that a representative of each of Gittisham Parish Council, Honiton Town Council and the Coombe Estate are invited to project meetings.
Okay, that seems sensible. Thank you very much. We have a proposer for that, Councillor Paul Hayward. Cabinet, would anybody like to second that? Councillor Marianne Rickson?
I second this proposal.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Debbie, could we go to a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you are for the proposal. Thank you. Okay, Chair, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you everybody who contributed on that, and particularly Councillor Bond. Okay, so we now go to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 21. And this is the Farringdon Neighbourhood Plan Examiner's Report. And within that, we have 3 recommendations that members endorse the examiner's recommendations on the Farringdon Neighbourhood Plan, that members agree that a referendum version of the plan incorporating the examiner's modifications should proceed to referendum and a decision notice to this effect be published, and 3, that members congratulate all involved, particularly the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, on their hard work in developing this neighbourhood plan. Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Sorry, Chair, I hadn't lowered my hand from the vote.
Oh, okay.
I don't need to speak, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No worries. Councillor Paul Hayward then, please. Oh, what's happening there? Councillor Hayward?
I think someone may have their microphone off, Chair. We just got a running commentary on either the football or some other report. Who knows?
Okay.
So really, I'd just like to, again, thank Angela for the report. Having been part of a fair few neighbourhood plans myself, and the work that goes into them, both from the district council and the groups that have to put in inordinate amounts of time and effort to get to this almost finished result, I'd just like to heartily propose the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Jeff Young, please.
Thank you. As my village backs onto Farringdon, I would love to congratulate them on getting their neighbourhood plan through. And I know there's going to be a problem with the referendum. It'd be nice to know when we can get that sorted, because we can't have referendums at the moment, can we? But I would like to, has someone proposed it? But if they haven't proposed it, I will.
We've got a proposer in Councillor Hayward. Would
Right,
you like
I
to
will
second
second it.
Councillor Young?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got that. Can I come to Councillor Eleanor Rylance, please?
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to commend this neighbourhood plan to the Cabinet and ask you to put it forward for referendum. I know they've worked incredibly hard on it, and I know that it's been a pretty stressful year to get it done. And you know they've been incredibly diligent, and it's all kudos to them really that they've managed to get through all the stages. And so you know it really should proceed. That's my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rylance, very much. Right, will your wish be our command? Let's see. Debbie, can we go to the vote, please, on this now?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand if you're for the proposal. Thank you. And that is carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, warm congratulations to Farringdon for getting this done. To answer the question from Councillor Young about when referendums can actually happen, I was sitting in a meeting today of Team Devon, which is Devon County, and all the other district leaders. There are deep concerns still about whether elections are possible, and they are profound. Some districts are more worried than others. But and certainly the county is worried. However, as it stands, the elections are on. That's as it stands, and in which case, I don't really see much excuse not to do a referendum on the same day. But this is a moving picture. Councillor Eileen Wragg coming in on that.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I think the public are rightly confused. There are football matches, tennis tournaments. All right, all the precautions might be in place, but there's travel involved in all of these. There's 6 nations. There's now the Olympics being proposed, and people are confused. And the Prime Minister, you know, Matt Hancock saying only yesterday, stay at home, when very recently the Prime Minister has gone to Scotland. You know, it's very confused. Can you wonder that people are getting together and having parties? It's a confusing situation, and I despair at the shambolic way that the whole thing has been handled. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Wragg. Okay, so as I understand it, if it's of any use to people, really the last day that these elections, well, they have to be called, don't they, officially on something like the 27th or 28th of March. So we hope that if the government are going to make a decision to postpone, that they don't leave it until that day. Let's hope so, but we don't know. We don't know at the moment. Right, thank you very much. Councillor Dan Ledger. We're sort of off agenda at the moment, but Councillor Ledger?
Just a quick comment. With that in mind, just on that topic, are we going to see a report coming to Cabinet for how the district would run safe elections come May? And that would need to come to Cabinet very soon, if so.
Okay, that's a great idea. Let's note that, Councillor Leisure. Thank you, and the CEO is in the meeting, so I'm sure he's heard that. And that would be useful, and for the next Cabinet meeting, perhaps in early March. Thank you, Councillor Leisure. Right, I now need to hand over to the Vice Chair of Cabinet to take us into agenda item 22, the exclusion of press and public on this particular item. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. I've been practicing this all day. I wish to move the following, that under section 100, open bracket A, close bracket, open bracket 4, close bracket, of the Local Government Act 1972, the public, including the press, sorry, I forgot the brackets there, be excluded from the meeting as exempt information of the description set out on the agenda is likely to be disclosed. And on balance, the public, the public interest is in discussing this item in private session, open brackets, part B. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Debbie, we haven't gone off air yet, have we?
No.
No. Okay. In which case, I'll say something incredibly quickly, which I should have said
Chair,
earlier.
Can you just vote to go into private, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Let's vote then. Debbie, can you lead us through the vote on?
Yep. Thank
doing
you, Chair. So, members of the Cabinet, if you could please raise your electronic hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chair. And we've got a delay of about a minute and a half from what you hear now to live stream. So do please bear with us before we give the all clear that we are off air. Thank you.
Okay. With apologies to members attending tonight, I had intended earlier at the top of the meeting to give a very brief report on Cabinet changes. I'm terribly sorry I haven't done that. So therefore, just briefly to offer huge thanks to Councillor Jessica Bailey and to welcome Councillor Nick Hancock, but I'll email everybody tomorrow.